Welcome back to The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Previously, I sealed Ganon away and brought peace back to Hyrule. And this time, I'm going to be doing a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, actually. This isn't going to be like a lot of my other bonus videos where I either A, do content that I knew I wasn't going to get to after the game was over or after the playthrough was over, so I did it before the playthrough ended, just to make sure that I was going to do it. Or, it's not like B, where I did multiplayer content that I knew I wasn't going to get to until the game was over, and I wanted to continue doing the Let's Play at a proper schedule, at a proper pace. I didn't want to break the pace, just so I could wait to show off multiplayer content. Or C, content that just didn't unlock until after the final boss was completed, until after the credits played. This is not going to be like that. I will be going back and showing off gameplay of the game itself, but a majority of this video will be focused on other things. The best description of what this video will be like that I can give you is something like a comprehensive sort of guide to almost everything Ocarina of Time related. You'll see what I mean by that later, but for now, I'm gonna get right into the gameplay so I can get that out of the way, so then we can get to some of the more interesting things. Starting things off, we're gonna be going back to the N64 version of Ocarina of Time for a few miscellaneous things. Mainly, I'll be getting the Scarecrow Song. That's not a secret. I've been talking about that for quite a few episodes now, that I would eventually get the Scarecrow Song, just not then. And this is the last episode in the series, so if I didn't get it now, I would be kind of a little bit of a liar. So I'm gonna get that this episode, and I also have a few other things I want to talk to you about. I never ended up getting 50 gold Skulltulas. That was my goal, and I didn't end up meeting it. I thought I would. I didn't. I had about 47 at the end of this playthrough, and I am not going to go out of my way for the last 3, just strictly due to what they give me. It's a piece of heart. I don't really need that at this point, especially considering the fact that I don't have any more pieces of heart, so it would just kind of be one extra miscellaneous piece of heart in my inventory. Not inventory, whatever subscreen it goes on to. It would just kind of be sitting there, all alone, all sad, and I don't have a use for it. So I'm not going to do that to that piece of heart, nor am I going to do that to myself. I think it's not worth it. Just to tell you again, it's a piece of heart. It's not that important. I do know what the reward is for 100 gold Skulltulas, though, and that is money. It's really money. On every visit to the gold Skulltula house, you'll get money. I believe it's somewhere in the 200 rupee range.
Huh?
I don't find it to be very worth it. It sounds like a really, really good thing. It's not. You're gonna be really, really, really late in the game at that point, and getting like 200 rupees for every 10 gold Skulltulas or whatever, whenever it gives you the money, it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. I ended up with a filled out, maxed out wallet at the end of this playthrough. You don't need money that much. You really don't. This isn't a game like Wind Waker where you really, really need money. It's not. So getting the 100% reward for gold Skulltulas, it's not worth it. It's really not. So that's all I want to say about that. There's actually some interesting things we can talk about on the title screen of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I kind of spoiled this first episode on accident. If you wait long enough on the title screen, it'll play little snippets, which I find to be kind of interesting. I've probably had them playing this whole time that I was talking. You can go back and watch them if you want. They just play when you wait on the title screen and wait for another loop of Link riding on Epona. I believe there are only 3. That's to my knowledge, though. I could be wrong. There's one, Ganondorf riding on a horse. There's Twin Rova messing you up with, oh, if I forget the Gerudo's name, I'm gonna be so sad. I forgot. I'm sad now. I don't remember her name. I usually forget in the moment. So I apologize about that. But there's that scene, and there's also a scene with Sheikah in the Fire Temple, or I believe it's outside in Death Mountain Crater, something like that. I'm not too sure. But I just find that to be kind of interesting, that if you wait long enough, they give you little tidbits. But more importantly, there's some more things we have to do actually in-game, so let's get to that, shall we? And by in-game, I mean the file select screen. Wow, that was I don't know what that was. I'm concerned. I really am. Anyway, more importantly, there are quite a few things I never went over on the file select screen, because I just wanted to get right into it. First of all, there's the average copy and erase file. There's no empty file here for me to copy, because I had a failed file, which we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, you can erase files, you can copy files, it's pretty simple. But more importantly, the options menu has sound options. You can change it from stereo to mono to headset to surround. Whoa, it's like I'm in a movie theater with surround. I don't know. That was a bad joke. I apologize. I'm not going to do that again. I really am sorry about that. I keep it to stereo. Z-targeting. This is really the only interesting thing on this options menu. Z-targeting is a little bit interesting. You can change it to be two different types of Z-targeting. They effectively do the same thing, but the controls are a little bit different. I had it set to switch Z-targeting this entire playthrough. That essentially meant that I pressed the Z button, and it would switch my targets or Z-target onto something, and the moment I wanted to stop Z-targeting onto something, I would press the Z button again. That's how that worked. But there's also hold. Hold is when you want to Z-target onto something, you hold the Z button, and that will Z-target onto that thing, and once you want to stop, you let go. It's pretty simple stuff, especially for someone who's already played a bunch of other 3D Zelda games. I just wanted to let you know that I believe the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time has it auto-set to hold, not switch, which is what the N64 version has it auto-set to. There are two different options. You can do whatever you want. I personally have become a little bit ambidextrous, is that the right word? I don't know. I can do both. I don't have to have it set to switch or to hold. Either or works fine for me. You can also check the brightness here. Nothing else is really of note in the options menu. But, more importantly, if you check the file that you were playing on, this is the one I was playing on, you'll see that there are numbers on the file select screen. Those numbers are actually kind of interesting. That shows how many times you have died. You might realize, wait a second, you died in like a really early part in the game. Why did it say 0 deaths? Well, that's where the failed file comes into play. Right there you can see the one death I had in this entire playthrough on a failed file. Fun. Also, now that we're looking at this failed file, you can see that it actually shows you exactly how many hearts you have and exactly how many of the plot and MacGuffin things you have on your file select. So if I was looking for which file I want to select because I've named all of the files on this game link, I could go and check, oh, look, I haven't gotten anything on here, or, oh, look, I haven't had any deaths on this file, so that's not the file I'm looking for, or, oh, look, I had 12 deaths on this file, this is the one I'm looking for. It's kind of helpful. I do think that's a really nice touch, and games should do that a little bit more often. But we're done. We are done talking about menial things. We're hopping straight into the game now to get that Scarecrow Song. Now that we're back in Lake Hylia, we can finally go talk to those scarecrows and get myself that song. I was talking about it previously, but the Scarecrow Song is actually a little bit context sensitive. I tried to go there and just play the song to the Scarecrow, because I knew what I was going to get, so I was trying to go the path of least resistance, which is not the way they want you to go. What you have to do is talk to the Scarecrow, play the song then, and then go up and talk to the other Scarecrow, and then play the song. I guess if that's your first time through, that's most likely what you're going to do anyway. Having a little bit less magic than I should is kind of annoying me, so, why am I like this? I'm gonna quit. I'm not gonna sit here and grind for magic to make myself feel better. Anyway, I guess people who did play the game first time through, and they would talk to the scarecrows. They wouldn't just try to instinctively play the ocarina, but like, for me, I can't really think of it that way. But anyway, what you want to do is, again, talk to Banuru, pull out your ocarina, and he will be like, whoa, that's a pretty sweet ocarina, and then I forgot to play the song, because I pressed B on accident. The song I'm gonna do, just so I can be that one real cool kid who gets all the women, I'm gonna play the, what's it called? I forgot. It's a song from Majora's Mask, and I put A at the end, so now I'm the coolest kid on the block. You play the song to him, then you hop up here and talk to Pierre, the other scarecrow, first, and then he memorizes a different song. This is when I tried to teach him a song, and I, may or may not have just made it all one note. I believe I did that on screen, so if you've seen that, then you know what I did. Whatever. I'm tired. It's not even late and I'm tired. What am I, an old man? Anyway, now that I've done that, I have done everything I can do as a child, so I'm gonna go back to the Temple of Time and become a big boy. Now that I'm back here at Lake Hylia, I can come over to the Scarecrows one more time and actually learn the Scarecrow Song. Again, it's a little bit context sensitive. What you have to do first is talk to him, and then he'll let you play the song and learn it for you. Anyway, hey, aren't you the fairy buddy I met a long time ago? Wow, you crew, dude. Well, here's your song. What? No, I never forget. You're the one who forgot, aren't you? If you have an ocarina, play that song, baby. So what he wants us to do is play the song. Oh, hey, an ocarina. I automatically tried to start playing the song. I'm so awkward whenever it comes to this side quest. I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm just so terrible at it. I know what to do now, but like, I'm dumb. Anyway. He'll tell you that his friend Pierre will pop out of nowhere and just, appear all over the place. He essentially went and started exploring the world, however a Scarecrow does that. And he will pop up in different places whenever you play that song and allow you to get to other areas. For example, I have some footage here of me going to the Shadow Temple and using Pierre to get a gold sculpture that I previously would not have been able to get. I believe that if I go all the way over here, I might be able to use Pierre to get up to that piece of heart. Keyword being believe. That has been my, yeah, I can. Okay, I can. I'm gonna do it right now just to show it off. It's the easiest way to show it off. You get it. It's right here. It's right here. It's super easy. And, you can hookshot up to Pierre, and that'll take you to that piece of hearts. I used the leaf, but, again, Pierre's there. But yeah, you can play the Scarecrow Song here, you can make Pierre appear out of nowhere, and you can hookshot up to him and get the piece of heart that way. But that's really everything left I have to do in the N64 version of Ocarina of Time. I will see you in something else different and special. What could that different and special thing be? Well, there are quite a few different versions of this game. But GeekoVision, literally none of you cry. How many versions of Ocarina of Time are there? Well, there are 5 different versions of the N64 version. That was quite a lot of versions. There are 5 different N64 versions of this game. And you might think, well, yeah, no duh, there's obviously the original N64 version, the 2 re-releases on the GameCube, and the Wii and Wii U Virtual Console re-release. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about on the N64, on the original hardware. There are 5 different versions of this game out there. Mind you, minus a few changes, a lot of the changes are pretty minor and unworthy of giving any amount of spotlight to. So I'm just going to be focusing on a lot of the more major changes between different versions of Ocarina of Time for the N64. 3 of the 5 re-releases were made for Japan and North America, whereas only 2 were made for Europe. There are 3 different versions of the game out there, technically 1.0 all the way up to 1.2, and a lot of the changes between 1.0, which was the base game at launch, to 1.1 were very small. It was just minor text and bug fixes. But once you get to 1.2, things start to get a little bit dicey. 1.1 to 1.2 wasn't a simple bug/text fix like 1.0 to 1.1 was. No, not at all. Nintendo kind of maybe messed up a little bit. A lot of the resources that were used in Ocarina of Time were found in a public commercial resource library. And for whatever reason, a lot of those resources happened to be references to the religion of Islam. Nintendo ended up using quite a few Islamic things accidentally in Ocarina of Time. To name a few, the blocks that can be found throughout the entire game kind of had Islamic symbols on them in 1.1 and 1.0. In 1.2, they obviously changed that to be a completely different symbol that they made themselves. A similar thing can be found with the mirror shield. The mirror shield in 1.0 and 1.1 also had an Islamic symbol on them, whereas in 1.2 it was completely changed. But there is an even bigger whammy. The Fire Temple music that was featured in 1.0 and 1.1 is actually comprised of Islamic chanting, which, needless to say, didn't necessarily sit well with people of the Islamic faith. This issue was brought up to Nintendo, and Nintendo promptly changed that for the 1.2 release and made a completely different song. I will play a little bit of the song now, so if you are going to be offended by this, I will put a little timestamp up in the top left corner that you will be able to see and you'll be able to go to. I don't want to offend anyone, this is just here for really educational purposes, so if you are not interested in listening to this, then I would recommend skipping to there. But without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and let you listen. Now that that's over, as somewhat of a side note, that wasn't actually removed because of the backlash necessarily. It was actually removed because it was against Nintendo's terms and policies. They don't want religion in their games, for obvious reasons, so the reason they removed it wasn't really because of the backlash, it was more because it didn't fit with their company's policies. I just think that's kind of an interesting thing to note. I don't know why I found that so interesting, but I did. So there you go, have some more needless, unimportant information. Now that we're done talking about versions specifically, I'm going to kind of go a little bit broader and talk about re-releases of the game as a whole. All of the re-releases that you can play on the GameCube, on the Wii, on the Wii U, all of them run on a modified version of the 1.2 version. But also, some of them add things which are really unnecessary, but really, really cool. The two GameCube releases of Ocarina of Time are a little bit interesting. One of which because it was released in a Zelda collection which came with Zelda 1, Zelda 2, a demo for Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, and Ocarina of Time. Where's the Link to the Past? The world may never know, but it had Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and a demo for Wind Waker, so all was right with the world. But there was also another version of Ocarina of Time that was given out in limited quantities to people who pre-ordered Wind Waker for the GameCube. It was The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Master Quest. Master Quest is a harder version of the original Ocarina of Time that alters dungeon design, and what I mean by that isn't necessarily that the rooms are rearranged or anything, but everything that you do in any specific room is altered to be much more difficult. This is a really cool addition that was actually planned way before the GameCube's inception. Back when the Nintendo 64 disk drive was a thing, which, wow, that flopped hard. They were planning on creating an expansion for Ocarina of Time that did essentially what Master Quest did. It was planned to be called Ura Zelda. There is no way that I am going to talk about Ura Zelda in its entirety here, because that can fill a 20-minute video of its own. So, I'm going to leave links in the description to certain things that I don't have the time to talk about here, but I think are worth mentioning. There are a lot of interesting different videos that go into depth as to what Ura Zelda could have been, if it could have added more dungeons, things like that. It's a really, really interesting listen, so I'd really recommend going to do that. But just know that Ura Zelda is a thing. It was essentially what Master Quest was meant to be, but on steroids, I guess? Fun. So you want to play Master Quest, but you don't have a GameCube, and you don't have the money to spend on buying a GameCube, just so you can buy another expensive disc, just so you can play Ocarina of Time, but not really. Well, that's fine, there's a more affordable option out there for you. If you want to play Ocarina of Time Master Quest now, you can purchase the Nintendo 3DS version, which really just can't stop being talked about, can it? And once you've completed the main campaign of Ocarina of Time 3D, you will unlock Ocarina of Time Master Quest on the 3DS version. But it's slightly different. It's kind of a Hero Mode and Master Quest hybrid. If you don't know what Hero Mode is, for all those uninitiated within the Zelda series, I'll explain it really quickly. It's either, hey, let's flip the world to mess people up, or give them double damage, or why not both? Master Quest 3D is the why not both variation with the more difficult dungeon layouts. So it's a little bit more difficult than Master Quest on the GameCube, but I think it's slightly more interesting for that reason. And to kind of round off this N64 segment of the video, I have another miscellaneous fact for you that you probably don't care about, but still interesting nonetheless. Ocarina of Time runs on a heavily modified version of Mario 64's engine, which is just so odd to me. I don't see how two games so different could run on, I don't want to say a similar engine, because I assume it's a heavily modified engine, but they run on something that was even slightly similar. It seems weird. I can see it. I can definitely see it, but it just feels odd. I don't know. So now that we're done with the N64 version, I think it's about time we move on to a version I've been talking about consistently throughout this playthrough, but avoiding showing off. So, without further ado, let's talk about The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time 3D. I'm going to get this out of the way right now. This is running on the Citra emulator. I'm not recording this off of any actual hardware. I don't have a 3DS capture card, nor do I have a way to record off of a 3DS legitimately. This is through emulation. But it's not great emulation. I think there's a problem with my ROM that's messing up some of the 2D textures that are meant to be there, but they're not there. They're just gone. So, even if I knew how to use the Citra emulator before this playthrough started, I wouldn't have recorded the 3DS game to begin with. Citra is definitely not at the height of its ability. There are quite a few issues with it still, and I don't feel comfortable doing an entire playthrough of a game through the Citra emulator, so I'm just doing it to show off some pretty basic, pretty overall things about the 3DS remake of Ocarina of Time. Something else to note, I'm going over very broad topics. There are a lot more minuscule differences that you can find in a video that I will link in the description down below. It does a fantastic job of explaining literally everything the 3DS version changes. There are major changes in there, and then itty-bitty tiny changes, as well as Easter eggs that you can find in the 3DS version of the game. I'd really recommend checking it out, but without further ado, let's get into the more broad topics that I wanted to talk about in this video. First of all, let's get into some of the more quality of life things that the 3DS version adds over the N64 version. First of all, if you look at the item equip subscreen, which isn't technically a subscreen anymore, you will notice that you can equip more items, which is fantastic. Thank you. I hate being able to only equip 3 items when I want to do more than just something that requires 3 items. It's terrible. It's not that bad, but it's definitely a quality of life thing that I really, really welcome. And also, equipping items is slightly different in this version. First of all, if you notice in the N64 version, every single item had its own set spot. There was a spot for the bow, there were spots for all of the different types of arrows you could equip. There were very specific spots given to those items. On the 3DS version, I know you can't see it now, but items are just thrown all over the place. You can put items wherever you want. It kind of annoys me a little bit, but if you were at all interested, items don't have specific spots anymore. They just go anywhere into your inventory. Also, equipping these items is a little bit different as well. If you want to equip the items, you can tap on the item and then press the button you want to equip it to if you're trying to equip it to a button, or you can tap on the item and then you can tap onto the tap item equip thing. I don't know what to call it. Essentially, you can tap and use an item. You tap on the item first and then you tap onto the tap thingy that you want the item to go to. I believe you can drag the items. Quotes on believe. I'm not quite sure if it's just finicky or if it doesn't exist, because I want to believe it's something like Wind Waker HD where you can drag the items, but I'm not too sure. Either way, tapping is a lot easier than dragging, so I just recommend going for the tap method either way. So there you go, that's the differences between equipping items. Also located on the bottom screen are all the other subscreens that exist as well. You can check your gear, you can check your map. It's very, very useful. It's on the touchscreen. You can easily check it while still playing the game and still moving forward. It's a very nice addition. I also want to go off on a tangent a little bit. A lot of people say that the 3DS has no place, but this is exactly why the 3DS does have its own place. There are so many quality of life things that the 3DS does for you, and this is a perfect example of it. You can continue to play, you can check your maps, you can check your items, you can check your gear without having to pause the game. It's really intuitive and it works very, very well. But anyway, on to more than just the subscreen differences. Playing the Ocarina in this version of the game is also slightly different. First of all, once you begin to play the Ocarina, which can be found in the bottom left corner, it's no longer an item, which is also a very good quality of life change. You'll notice that the Ocarina will pop up in the bottom screen. You can tap on the buttons that appear on the bottom screen to play the Ocarina, but you can still use button inputs. Obviously, there's no C-stick, so the inputs that you need to input are button inputs. It's buttons, no C-stick, no analog stick. You can use the analog stick to change the pitch of the Ocarina if you want to, which I don't think I noted. I believe that's in the N64 version as well. Quote, believe. But more importantly than that, in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice something that looks a lot like note sheets. If you click on that, you'll notice that you can look at any song you've learned while playing the Ocarina. If you forget how to play a song, you tap the bottom right, and you can look at the song that you need to play. This is such a fantastic quality of life thing, and it's probably the reason I couldn't remember any of the songs while playing through the N64 version, but whatever. It's such a nice feature, and I love these small quality of life things. I know I keep saying quality of life, but really, the 3DS version is just so much better in so many different ways that just make the game easier to play and digest. I think there are so many great things that were added in this version. Again, for example, being able to look at your songs while playing them. I know you're sick and tired of me saying quality of life, because I'm sick and tired of saying it, so I'm going to stop saying quality of life and move on to some changes that are a little bit more major. The Nintendo 3DS version of Ocarina of Time attempts to be a little bit more new player friendly, I guess is the best way to say that, newbie friendly. There's something called a Sheikah Stone of Guidance in this game. We've talked about the normal Sheikah Stones. They give you small, weird little hints. They are essentially just gossip stones. They gossip to you. But the Sheikah Stone of Guidance is a little bit more hand-holdy. You go inside and realize that the Citra emulator lags whenever you go into the Sheikah Stone of Guidance, which makes no sense. But more importantly, this is a guide. It's just as it sounds. It will show you specifically what you have to do in certain sections. It kind of plays up the mystery a little bit because it cuts out certain parts, but it tells you the gist of what you have to do. So for those who didn't know that you had to take a fish and throw it in front of Lord Jabu Jabu's face to make him open his mouth and suck you in, it'll show you that. And another nice quality of life thing that you probably won't be able to notice here because I didn't get far enough in the game to show it off, there's actually a bunch of different sections. It splits off the information that you can receive into different sections. So if you don't know how to do something in the Fire Temple, you don't have to scroll through everything and look for something that talks about the Fire Temple. There will be a specific section made for the Fire Temple. So you can go and say, oh, okay, I need to do this in the Fire Temple. I need to blow up this wall. It's very, very helpful to newcomers, and I think it's a worthy inclusion. It doesn't hurt my playthroughs at all because I don't have to use it. You never have to use it. It's never shoved in your face. In fact, it's just sitting there at the left of Link's house, never explained to you unless you go up and interact with it yourself. So it's not necessary to complete the game. It's just there for those who need it, and I think it's a nice change. As more of a side note, even though this still does have to deal with the Sheikah Stones of Guidance, you can find one at the side of Link's house and one at the side of the Temple of Time. So that's a thing, just in case you were wondering where every single Sheikah Stone of Guidance was, those are the 2 locations in the game. It is kind of helpful because if you start off the game as a child, if you turn off the game but save, then you will start off at Link's house as a child, but as an adult, if you save the game, turn it off, turn it back on, you'll start off at the Temple of Time. So there are Sheikah Stones for every single area that you start off in, just in case you need to turn on the game immediately and get a hint just like that. It's helpful. I think it's kind of a nice choice that they would put the Sheikah Stones of Guidance there. But that was just kind of more of a side note. It's not too important to note that, so The 3DS version of Ocarina of Time is, yeah, a little pixelated, but visually beautiful. I think this is one of the best looking 3DS games out there, only behind maybe Majora's Mask 3D. I think the visuals just fit so well, and I love the visual changes they put into this game. There are quite a few rooms that were just barren in the N64 version, and they actually have life and character now. The Nintendo 3DS version, despite being on hardware that's meant for portable gaming, it's visually stunning, I think. I think it is very beautiful, and that might just be me, but I love the models, I love everything about Ocarina of Time 3D's visuals. With everything I've been saying, veterans of the series still may not think there's really anything for them in the 3DS version of Ocarina of Time, minus maybe the Master Mode, which is only slightly different to be fair. Everything else is just kind of there for newbies, people who haven't played the game before, people who might not know how to play the game, so they make it easier for those people. There's nothing really for veteran players. But there is actually something that's new, and I personally find to be very interesting. If you go back into Link's house, you can actually do something in there in the 3DS version, which is kind of crazy if you've played the N64 version and don't know about the 3DS game, because, whoa! There's actually something to do in Link's house. If you press A near Link's bed, you will be given 2 options, one of which is to sleep. Sleeping will recover all of your hearts, and the other is to have a dream. Having a dream will take you to a different menu entirely. There, you can refight every single boss that you fought in the game and do it for a time trial. It's a boss rush mode essentially, and that's really nice. It's unneeded, sure, but I think it's still a nice touch, and that is something that's there for veterans if they want to test how good they really are at the game. Well, that's pretty much it for the 3DS version of the game. It's visually better, there are quite a few small quality of life things, and there are a few additions for people who are new to the game and people who are veterans. But, again, I didn't talk about everything that the 3DS game adds. There will be a link to a video in the description so you can check it out. Yada yada yada, I'm not going to repeat myself. But here's where we get into the real meat of the video. And I would like to explain myself before we hop into it. So, I was doing research for this video because I'm talking about information. I want to make sure that all my information is correct, and if there was any other small information that I wanted to talk about, I would find it, I would make a list to show what I was talking about, just so I could, hit every single point and go from there. And I was doing that. I was doing research, and I may or may not have gone down a rabbit hole, and now I have a folder called Bonus Ocarina of Time that is filled to the brim with a bunch of random miscellaneous things. Essentially, my thought process while getting information while researching was, why not talk about every single form of media that's out there that correlates to Ocarina of Time? It'll work out, right? Needless to say, this thought process kind of made this video a little bit disjointed near the end. I really don't have a lot of good segues. Essentially, all I'm going to say is, now we're talking about this completely different thing. So, let's start off with talking about Ocarina of Time artwork. Ocarina of Time has a lot of beautiful artwork, whether it be concept art or official artwork, and essentially all I'm going to be doing is talking about a few pieces that stand out to me personally, while a lot of other pieces are playing in the background. So, there you go, fun stuff. That's how this is going to work out. First of all, I'd like to talk about a lot of the concept art. I really didn't see this floating around a lot. I don't see a lot of people talking about it, minus one of the concept arts, which shows a version of Link that was not yet finalized. It shows essentially a Link that was a lot more similar to his counterpart in Zelda 1, Zelda 2, and A Link to the Past. I was trying to say like Zelda Nest or whatever, and that's not what anyone calls it. There's also a lot of artwork that features temples, like the Dodongo's Cavern, the Forest Temple, Ganon's Castle, as well as Great Jabu Jabu, and I didn't know that existed. In fact, I didn't even know that there was Deku Tree artwork until I started looking at artwork for this playthrough. I think that's because I focused on a lot more of the 3D artwork, a lot of the artwork that was made for Ocarina of Time 3D, which looks real nice. There's also another piece of artwork that stands out to me strictly because I always thought it was Majora's Mask artwork, despite the fact that Link is holding the Deku Shield, and, you know, the Deku Shield isn't in Majora's Mask, so there's that. There's also this one really interesting piece where it's Link riding on Epona, and it's a white background. It looks absolutely stunning. A lot of the artwork here is just really nice. And kind of an odd piece for me is a chest engulfed in red ice, which I don't understand why they went out of their way to depict that in artwork. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It really doesn't. But yeah, I really enjoy the art style of Ocarina of Time. And while I'm kind of in this phase of talking about artwork, I might as well tell you that there are slight differences between Ocarina of Time for the N64's artwork and Ocarina of Time 3D's artwork. The Ocarina of Time 3D artwork just has a little bit of a cleaner feel. It looks really like a painting, and there's a lot less black outlines on things. It is less line work, essentially, I guess. I don't know. I'm not an artist. Don't ask me too much about this. All I know is that I think the Ocarina of Time 3D artwork is very clean. It looks much cleaner than the N64 artwork, though both are equally beautiful. On the topic of artwork, you might have seen some artwork around by a character named Akira Himekawa, but who is this person, you may ask? Well, they create the Legend of Zelda manga series, something that's been going on since 1999, I believe, with the release of the Ocarina of Time manga, and is continuously going on to this day, with the releases of the Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which is a fantastic series, by the way. I'd recommend checking that out, but we're talking about Ocarina of Time here, and seeing as their first Zelda manga was the Ocarina of Time manga, let's talk about that. So if you've played The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, you may think, why do I need to read a manga of it? It's literally just the same simple basic plot, but this time it has different drawings, which it might pull you in and of itself, but if you're more there for the story, I am glad to tell you that Akira Himekawa, which is a group of 2 women, I forgot to add that, but Akira Himekawa does a fantastic job at adding smaller details that the game may overlook. For example, backstory. And sometimes they add a bunch of different, really interesting, really unnecessary, but really nice stories. In fact, with these side stories, they may create new characters, or heck, even new races. The Watarara sounds nice. That's actually a race created strictly from Akira Himekawa. That's not something that's in the games at all, but it is correlated with Ocarina of Time because it was in the manga, and it's actually kind of neat. I really do like that race. It's essentially the Rito, but hey, they're bird people. Bird people are pretty cool, and you wouldn't have seen these bird people in the Ocarina of Time setting unless you read the Akira Himekawa manga. There you go. Go read it. It's really good. I will say it is very catered towards children. That being said, it's still a fun read if you've played the game. You can see how things change, how there's more backstory, how some things are simplified. It's kind of nice. To kind of pick out one backstory which I'm particularly fond of that I've already kind of talked about but haven't gone into detail with, when Link goes back to Lon Lon Ranch as an adult and meets Malon again, she kind of mistakes him for a prince because he saves her. It's just a nice little side story. It's really cute. I'm fond of it. And I just wouldn't have seen that. I wouldn't have that background context that, mind you, isn't official, but is still really nice to know if I hadn't read the manga. I think, again, it's worth a read if you're planning to play the game. Maybe not if you're planning to play the game because you don't want spoilers, but if you have played the game, if you don't care about spoilers for the game, it's a nice read. But now we are out of the art section, and we are going to be moving on to commercials, which I guess can be considered an art if you could consider making Ocarina of Time commercials an art. Whatever, the point is, Ocarina of Time has some kind of interesting commercials. I'm not going to go full reaction channel on you and put a face cam in the corner and react to these commercials. 1, because I've already seen all of them, and 2, because I think some of them can be a little bit uninteresting, but I will show off all the ones that I do have documented. I'm sure there are some that I've forgotten, but I'm going over the ones that I have found, the ones that I have thought are interesting, or at least notable. Let's start off with a Japanese commercial, and I know Japanese commercials are usually known for how strange they are, or at least strange considering the US's standards of what a commercial should be, but I don't see how they can really make this too weird. It's an action game, it's an adventure game, I mean, it's pretty simple to market for. I don't think they could really do anything to make this weird. Can you repeat that for me one more time? Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. You know what, to be fair, it is less weird than other commercials I've seen from Japan. But also, it just makes me think, what? Who thought this was a good idea? Who in the PR department was like, guys, I got it. Listen to me. A girl playing Ocarina of Time, just making oddly sexual noises. Perfect. All the people will buy it. I mean, I guess to an extent it worked, but what? There's another Japanese commercial which I find to be a little bit less interesting than this one. It's in the same vein somewhat. It's just a girl playing Ocarina of Time, cutting to her reactions to certain things, except this time it is not as odd. There's actual dialogue instead of just, yeah, that. But that's really all I found for Japanese commercials. So, what other types of commercials were there in different regions? Well, kind of skipping around a little bit, there was one for Ocarina of Time 3D that was very, very adorable. It had Robin Williams in it, and I'm just gonna let you watch it in its entirety.
The first time I saw you, I knew we'd be linked forever. For you, I traveled to the four corners of the world. I faced adversity. I became a hero.
Dad.
I saved your kingdom.
Dad.
Yes, Zelda?
Are you mixing me up with the princess again?
Hard to say. You're both pretty magical.
Now, that was just a magical commercial. That was adorable. I'm gonna be honest with you, that was a little bit less adorable. To be fair to Japan, at least their commercials aren't sexist. That's something. Yeah, so there was this English version of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time commercial, and it, got edited later and re-released as something a little bit less, messed up. It was whilst thou soar, whilst thou suck, instead of whilst thou save the girl, or whilst thou play like one, which, to be fair, really was not a good choice at all. A lot of the audience for the Legend of Zelda series is female, so they essentially just insulted a majority of their audience and said their playing ability was lackluster. So, yeah, not the smartest move in a lot of different senses. That was a really, really bad marketing ploy. Well, there's only one more commercial to look at, and it's actually from Mexico. It's not even a commercial for Ocarina of Time, actually. It's a commercial for a drink called Mirinda, but it's so magical in a different way than the Robin Williams one that I just can't describe it. It's so surreal seeing Link just drink a random Mexican soda thing. I really have no words. I don't know how Mirinda, whoever that woman is, got the rights to do this. But it's just so funny. It's just so funny. We are almost to the end. There is only one thing left for me to talk about. I was thinking about commercials. I was thinking about the manga, obviously, artwork that I would show off. But the one thing I truly didn't expect to get interested in while doing research for this game was the merchandise. I found pamphlets of, as they called it, gear that you could find at stores. It was like Link and Ganondorf action figures that you will be hard-pressed to find nowadays. It was like soundtrack CDs, an N64 system house, some very, very basic but really cool Ocarina of Time hoodies and shirts, player's guide, a snapback, a pocket watch. It's just weird stuff, and I got so intrigued that I went down the rabbit hole and started looking at some specific merchandise. I didn't want to talk about every piece of Ocarina of Time merchandise you could find, so I decided to kind of stick within the realm of figures and statues. Now, before I continue on, I would like to say that occasionally you will see that a picture was taken from a site called Monveri's Collection. I would like to say that I would highly recommend checking out this site, because not only did I use it for a majority of my merchandise research for this part, but it is also very, very well thought out, very well organized. The person has everything organized according to series, and I found out about a lot of merchandise that I never knew existed while doing research for this part, strictly by looking at this person's site. I restricted myself to only looking at Ocarina of Time related figures and the Zelda tab in general. There is so much more I've yet to explore on this site, and if you have the time, I think it's worth exploring. This is a really cool site to check out. There is a bunch more than just action figures. There's a bunch more than just, I think I put one UFO catcher thing on here. There is so much more that I'm not showing off. This isn't like a complete guide of what you can collect if you're an Ocarina of Time fan. This isn't that at all. I'd recommend that if you are trying to get into the business of that, then check out this site. Just like everything else, there will be a link in the description down below, like for the commercials, like for everything else. There will be a link. I'd really, really recommend checking it out. But enough rambling, let's get on to these pictures, shall we? But first, just to get the thing everybody knows about out of the way, The Legend of Zelda 30th Anniversary Ocarina of Time Adult Link Amiibo. Fun stuff. I'm gonna talk about exactly what games it can be used in. So, buckle down, boys, it's a long list. First of all, what games in the Zelda series can this amiibo be used with? Well, it's quite simple. Hyrule Warriors or Hyrule Warriors Deluxe, Twilight Princess HD, Hyrule Warriors Legends, or Breath of the Wild. But what about every other game in existence? Well, the Ocarina of Time amiibo is essentially interchangeable with every other Link amiibo, so Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 3DS and Wii U is a game that you can use it for. You can also use it for Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, One Piece Super Grand Battle X, Ace Combat, Assault Horizon Legacy, Yoshi's Woolly World, Poochie and Yoshi's Woolly World, Super Mario Maker, Chibi Robo Ziplash, New Style Bouquet 2, Fashion Forward, Kirby, Planet Robobot, Animal Crossing New Leaf, Miitopia, Skyrim, Style Savvy Styling Star, or Bayonetta 2. Wow, that's quite the list. But with that incredibly obvious piece of Ocarina of Time merchandise out of the way, shoved to the side, we can get into some of the more interesting things. For example, First 4 Figures, a company that makes a lot of statues, has made quite a few statues for Ocarina of Time. For example, there's a statue of Darunia, there's a statue of Dark Link, there are 3 statues of Ocarina of Time Link, one with Link in his normal tunic, one with him in his Goron tunic, and one with him in his Zora tunic, as well as a Sheik statue and a Skull Kid statue. I know this guy has Majora's Mask on him, so it's technically Majora's Mask Skull Kid, but it's Skull Kid nonetheless. It counts. There are also these really wonky but somehow charming collectible action figures of Ocarina of Time Link, Ganondorf, and Zelda. Again, they really don't look very accurate, though I guess that's about as accurate you're going to get to an Ocarina, or to an N64 model, that is. So, they did a good job, I guess, but that definitely wouldn't sell very well in the store these days. But again, there's somewhat of a charm to it, you know? A lot of the action figures you see nowadays in stores, they're so in-game accurate, and that's a good thing. I will say that. It's good to be accurate to the model, but sometimes you just kind of miss the charm where things were just a little bit off. There's also a lot of smaller blind box things for Ocarina of Time. Some unpainted figures, some kind of see-through figures akin to Jazzware, Sonic action figures. You know when they did that? When they were like, oh, look, they're see-through. That means it's a new figure, but it's the same sculpt, but we didn't have to paint it. It's just see-through plastic. I really, actually, truly wanted those, but never got my hands on any. But we're talking about Ocarina of Time, whatever. It's kind of a similar thing to that, but some just aren't painted, they're not even transparent. So there were blind box toys from Bandai. There was actually a figure set from Bandai as well, and there were a few other figure sets from different companies that all seem somewhat similar, to be fair. They were much smaller things. There was one from Kyoto and one from Yujin. I assume all of those are Japanese companies, as I've never heard of them. So, obviously, a lot of these action figures are quite old. Ocarina of Time came out a while ago, so you might not want to go search down older action figures to get them. You know, you might just want an Ocarina of Time action figure that's very readily available. Well, you can actually get one of those. World of Nintendo created an Ocarina of Time action figure. I don't know how recently, but they have created one, so you should be able to get that pretty easily. It's out there if you want it. It does look pretty nice and not super wonky. It doesn't look great, but it looks like an action figure that you could buy for relatively cheap. So there's that. As I previously stated, I do have kind of one odd thing out here, and that's the Katara Tomy Ocarina of Time UFO Catcher set, which is definitely in the charming, in the wonky sense field. Ganondorf, you know, shaving your eyebrows is an option. I'm just saying, but even though these do look somewhat strange, you don't really see characters made into stuffed animals very often of these guys. You don't see Ganondorf made very often, you don't see Darunia made very often, Zelda you see made very often, but not this incarnation of her, and Young Link and Adult Link you really don't see very often. You usually just see random different incarnations of Link that don't necessarily correlate to Ocarina of Time anymore. So I think these characters that are actually done for this set are very special. I actually did a bit of research and I found a lot of Zeldas for $10. Now that could mean that that's the character that is being bootlegged the most, but that might just mean she's the most common. I'm not quite sure, but this set is kind of interesting, and just to kind of throw something else that's somewhat interesting in here at the end, there was actually an advert for the gold cartridge of Ocarina of Time that was being sold as a limited edition, and just the whole saying, "Ye snooze, ye lose," is definitely a product of the 90s, and God, the 90s were a special time. But with that last little bit of merchandise information, that's the end of this longer than expected bonus video. I really didn't think it would turn out to be this freaking long. I knew I had a lot to talk about, but I didn't know I had 50 plus minutes worth of stuff to talk about. So I apologize for making this video so exceedingly long, and to all of you that's, you know, just stuck in there or skipped to the end, I see through your lies. But thank you nonetheless for checking out this video and dealing with 50 plus minutes of me, because even I wouldn't want that. Ugh, it sounds disgusting, but anyway. Now that we're at the end of this series, officially, I do want to give a big fat thanks section to everyone who helped me out and every single website that helped me out, so let's do that real quick. Thank you so much to Romer, Varlo the Great, Magic Paper, and obviously Rob Aronicle for giving me audio for episode 25. I appreciate all of you. Every single one of your opinions was interesting to listen to. Thank you so much. That would have been a much more boring, much more bland episode without you. Thank you so much to Zelda Sounds for making Baby Link a possibility. Baby Link thanks you. Without your beautiful sound resources, I would not have been able to create Baby Link and make it obvious when I made a big fat boo-boo. I'm just choosing the worst possible wording today, aren't I? Anyway, thank you so much to every other site I use for information, specifically the Zelda Wiki and, again, Monveri's collection. I really appreciate you for all the information that you've given me, specifically with Monveri's collection, and the merchandise, and Zelda Wiki with pretty much everything else. Zelda's wiki. Yes, it is Zelda's wiki. No, Zelda wiki is a fantastic place to find information, but I'm not going to try to drag this out for any longer. Thank you to everything and everyone that helped me. So, without further ado, that's the end of the series. Next time, I'll meet you back when I'm playing a different game. What could that game be? Well, the world may never know until a few weeks from now. So, until then.